Hey everyone, Art Cyan. I recently got a new iPhone and I thought I'd try out something really cool with it in terms of using some live action footage from it. It was very impressive, the quality you get out of it. We'll be using the iPhone for shooting the footage, CamTrackAR, the app on the iPhone for tracking in the camera. Then we'll use Blender to import the track and build the base scene. We'll move over to EmberGen for smoke simulation and effects, then hop into 3D Studio Max and Vray to render everything out. We'll also be using 3D Max's Tyflow plugin for the glass simulation Shatter effect, and then finishing it all off with Nuke for compositing. So when you open CamTrackAR, the app, you'll first define HD resolution, your frame rate 30, click on 3D on the top right corner, and then move around. And once you land somewhere nice and pick up a lot of data, then you can set the ground, the grid object where you need it to be in the lower left hand corner. From here, you could drop the tracking markers where you think it would be most helpful by just clicking and holding these. I'll just keep moving around and drop a few more markers to help us find some locators in 3D space later. After that, I just adjust the exposure and hit the record button. Try to get a steady-ish camera move. And once you hit the record button again, it will just finish the video and write out the files for you, which you can then upload and bring them into your 3D package. Okay guys, so we're going to start off by importing the actual CamTrackAR files. First we need to go to Preferences and load up the tool. So we're going to go to Add-ons, Install. I'm going to open up that directory, and right here there's already a Python script, so we're going to install that add-on, type in hit film and enable it by checking it on. Now we go to File, Import, all the way down here, hit film AR tracking data. I'm going to paste that path again, and right here is the setup file, .hfcs. I'm going to import that. Let me jump in. So basically what you get with this is a camera, the tracking markers you put in, and let me just go to layout. It also sets up your timeline for the entire footage. So let's jump to the camera and let's select the camera, go to camera data, check on background images. Let's add image, which is a movie clip, open, again, same path in that folder. We've got the .mp4 file. All right, so let's just scrub this so it comes alive. And now you can see where the tracking markers were actually plugged in. These are not very accurate when I placed it, but if you take the time to properly do that, then it will come through accurately. So let's go back to the camera and bring this opacity all the way up. Let's just hit play for a second. You know, the camera move I had for this shot, as well as how I handheld my phone, it was a bit jumpy, so it's not like perfect, but you know, for what we're doing, it's pretty good. I think if you take the time to you know, really control the iPhone and the move itself, and not do something crazy like what I did here, you know, very dynamic all over the place, you'll probably get better results than I did. All right, let's stop that for a second. So now we're like, what are we gonna do, right? If I go to my top view, The orientation it comes in with was set up by the ground plane we had selected in the video. So in this case, it's in a pretty decent spot. You know, the table and the PC roughly here-ish, something like that. It's just that it's rotated. And what we want to do is probably like rotate these so we get a straight line out of these. So matter of fact, it will probably be easier if we brought that here. So if you could imagine, this is the boxy shape of the PC roughly. Let's close that up. We're going to want to reverse that rotation, right? So we could either start off by kind of getting this rotation right here off the empty. I'm not going to be very accurate at the moment. Or you could have kept the empty at the location and then rotated after the fact. This probably makes a bit more sense. So I'm going to take all of these guys, control, and deselect my empty, parent it to the empty. So we go to object, parent, object, and we'll select the empty right there. So now everything is parented to this empty. So now if we move things around, it's going to follow. So in this case, kind of want something straight, let's say with these vertical lines, if that was the case. And then ideally you probably want to move it somewhere closer to the origin. There we go. So one thing I noticed is I could not snap to these locators, but you can definitely, let's say, create a, I don't know, let's say a box, super small, and align that to the locators. So X, Y, Z at the pivot, and then you could snap to those. So let's say I did that a few times, copy, paste, and I took this one and aligned it to this guy right here. Let's do one more in this corner, and then one more up top, align, select that locator. Now if I were to hide my locators, which you should be able to do that right here somewhere, empty. I'm just using my hotkeys, Shift H in my case. So you should be able to create this out a little bit easier. And let's say if I started with a mesh, or with a plane, I'll just quickly draw this out. I'm going to flip these normals. Let me also backface cull. There we go. So now I could take this vertex, right, and enable my snaps. I'm going to snap to vertex. Then I could like snap here and here, and that should be a lot easier. Obviously, that's not a good spot. But let's bring back our locators. Take this vertex. We'll want to zero all that out. So scale down to 0 on the y-axis. And this is very much an eyeballing game, at least with this CamTrackAR method. So what do? I kind of like go around in different parts of the video, pick out different frames, and do this little back and forth to see how things line up. So obviously we know this is going to be a straight box, right? So I'm gonna take the time to make that a bit more like a box. Maybe this corner, here, Let's also extrude while we're at it. Where is extrude? Here we go. This might make things a little easier. Okay, so let me go around for a second. We can see that, you know, there are definitely parts it falls apart, but there are definitely areas it does well. And like I said, for what we're doing, it's gonna be fine. So this is like roughly the shape. You'll definitely want to go in and do a better job than what I just did, you know, showing you guys how to do this. But that's the gist of it, really. And I've also noticed you might want to do an offset, maybe. In my case, you can see like there's a big jump, boom, right there, that drop. So I think it's off by like 1 frame. So if we were to go back to our camera, here we go back to, I can't remember if there's an offset on the timeline here. No. We could do that with the keyframes. New editor, graph editor, just select all these keyframes and then zoom in somewhere so it's a little easier to land it. You know, hit G holding down X so it only moves in the X axis. So let's do that again. X, I believe we want to go back 1 frame. So let me check that out now. Yeah. Let's try forward, X. Yeah, that's better. Let me just hit play on that somewhere around here. That's not too bad. Like I said, if you take the time to really place your anchors more accurately, then you would have a easier time to rebuild the box, your PC box. So this is pretty good. This is pretty much it. At this point, in my case, I want to do some animation on the graphics card. So again, that's just another area where you're going to have to eyeball in this case. So paste object. I mean, it's a different story if you were tracking like with a actual tracking software and you had some LiDAR geo from Luma, let's say like photogrammetry geo, point clouds, whatever, you will get a more accurate result. But this is pretty much just fun stuff. So I just copied that plane and I want to go to the camera and slice up where I think the graphics card plane would be. So I'm going to go into edit mode, loop cut, and kind of draw a line where I think it might be, right? All right, going to go into isolation mode. I'll just select these top faces and delete all that. I will take this edge and just bridge it. You could do it a billion other ways. So then I'll delete any of those extra faces, go back to our camera, and let's see how things line up now. I'm considering changing the coordinate space to object, but maybe not. It's fine. We'll just slide this over. And I think our graphics card is not that wide. Let's see what we get. So this is definitely an area that the track did not perform too well in my case, due to, like I said, due to the way I held the phone and, you know, maneuvered it. But let's just do a bit more, put in a bit more effort, see if we could clean that up. So I'll definitely want to go down on that axis there, come around, something like that. Let's play that out. Not too bad. Definitely take the time to finesse this stuff. Excuse me. But basically, we've got what we need. We have, let me flip that normal. We have a placeholder for the graphics card, a placeholder for for the PC. So at this point, we could move on to setting up some lighting. So let's open the shading tab, jump to our camera. What we're gonna do is project the video onto the box and let that illuminate our scene. Pretty straightforward approach, really. So let's do that. Let's create a new material while I've got the box selected, and let's add our texture or our video, navigate to it. Okay. Let's just throw that in for a second. Color, emission. Okay. So we need to camera map this, project it. So let's add a mapping node. Let's also bring in a texture coordinate, I believe. All right. Let's plug this into our vector here, and then we're gonna go with the window method and select our camera. Let me expand that. Select camera, right? Okay, now we can see that's been applied. We actually want this in emission, not in strength. There we go. All right, so let's punch in the frame count. And now we've got a projection. Very cool. If you don't want it to go all the way out there, I think you could do a clip and it'll just remove it. Now we've got our camera projection set up. Let's do a, let's get out of here. Let's add a simple gray material for a second to our graphics card. Let's change this to cycles. In my case, GPU. So let's see how this holds up lighting wise. I'm going to add a monkey. Bring that in here. Scale it down. One more, something like that. So let's place it on top of the graphics card. Okay, let me also subdivide the hell out of this. Get some decent reflections. Let's add a material real quick. See how it holds up. Let's do like a 0.2. Okay, let's get in here for a second. Okay, so with the actual box that we're using as our light source emission, we're going to want to make sure that is not visible to camera. But for now, let's just make it visible, just so we could see how this thing is responding, if it's you know, holding up well. Actually, even though this might be useful, let's delete that face. Let's go back. All right. It's doing pretty well. I just want to make sure like the pinks and the purples are reflecting properly. That the light source is working, and you can see when I move around in our timeline, as these colors update, so does the lighting. Therefore, the reflections. So things are looking good. Let me grab that graphics card, make that visible to camera for a second, so you can see. There's some specularity happening. If we had no spec, we get some nice soft shadows. It is, in the end, this is like a omnidirectional light source, so you're not going to get a very directional shadow, like a sharp shadow out of it, unless if you were to, like, let's say, make this really punchy, the actual texture. Let's see if we could demonstrate that in a very lazy manner. I'm sure if we go to linear, it's going to go lighter and brighter. There you go. That's a bit more punchy. Still not doing too much, but for the record, you probably don't want to change this out of sRGB. I was just trying to make an example out of it. So let's bring that back. But yeah, if you wanted to render this out of Blender, in this case, you would just want to make sure you go into Object and set this not visible to camera. Then you could take this plane and make sure it's a shadow catcher. I think you might have to check that off as well. I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think once you output it, you're not going to have to do that. But yeah, this thing is working just fine now. Okay, so let me show you guys what I did with this actual scene I've been working on. Basically using all those same methods we already discussed. I took that a step further, and I have a Porsche asset model I purchased. I ran it through an add-on that's called RigaCar. It is free, absolutely free, and pretty simple to use. I just followed one or two video tutorials, and I got everything I needed out of that. I even parented a camera to it just so I could check the wheel rotations and stuff like that. Got some up and down motion. This is the one of the splines, the shapes for the rig, I guess. But yeah, so real quick, that add-on is called RigaCar. This is the page for whoever made the add-on. But it gives you a pretty thorough explanation of the process, how to get the rig going. And then I followed this tutorial right here by John Yan, and it was super straightforward, how to get some motion going. So just followed this, and when it came time to export, I did have an issue initially, like the baking wasn't happening for the wheels, the steering, and the rotation. So it turns out, fortunately, this guy did a great job. He actually shared an add-on fix right here. So I would definitely grab his tool right here, because once I grabbed this particular add-on, which is modified from the RigaCar, I suppose, then it worked for me. So, and believe me, I spent like 2 hours trying to figure out what I was doing wrong, only to finally come across this guy's awesome video which explained it. So shout out to Jean Yan. I'm guessing he sounds French. I don't know. Thanks, man. So you can do whatever you'd like, right? With this, I don't know, with the setup. You could place a parked car and have a cool render going on, which I did, and it looked pretty sweet. You could do a lot of things with this, but this is what I decided to do, right? So I wanted to have this crazy animation. So I drew out the path and set up a path constraint, follow path. I animated it as best as I could without spending terribly too much time. But yeah, so I got this, and I'm ready to export it into EmberGen to do some FX. But prior to doing that, you're going to want to export like a low poly version of this stuff. And real quick, I'll just show you. All you need to do is go to a modifier and do a remesh, voxel, just dial this value to whatever you need. Like I think I had something like this. This is good enough. So you just do the same with the wheels. Probably you'll be better off just doing a simple cylinder, recreate like a simple cylinder, keep it low poly, and then export those out as a ABC, a limbic sequence. So if you were to point to the path, you in this case you want to make sure you set your frame range, selected objects only. I would do it a few times. So let's see, what I did was EmberGen, import. I exported the camera as one file, the vehicle as another, the tires as another, exhaust, just in case. I thought maybe I would do something else with it, but I didn't. Yeah, so you just export those out and then move on to, if you wanted to do it in Blender, you can move on to, just EmberGen and then export it to Blender, back into Blender and use OpenVDB. But in my case, I'm going to take it to EmberGen and then export that to 3D Studio Max to use with Vray. Okay, let me walk you guys through what I did with EmberGen so I could export out my VDB to take into 3D Studio Max to render. I basically, just because I'm not an effects artist, I really like these presets that EmberGen ships with. Super cool looking stuff. But I wanted to do some drift smoke type of stuff. And to me, the closest visually that, seemed like will work in my case was one of these manhole setups. I believe I went with this one, the Steam manhole. So yeah, I just loaded that up and I started to import the geometry pieces we're looking to use. So, if you go to right click, import, file path, you would point to your Alembic file. In my case, could be an FBX as well, I guess. And you probably want to go with something lower res than what I used because it was not too fast, not too real time, but it was fine for what I needed. Something you need to do is usually you'll assume you're going to plug in geometry, which is fine, but I just wanted to select certain pieces of geo, so I use the masking method. So if I select this car right here, scroll down, I checked off what I didn't want to calculate in the sim and only kept what I needed. I believe I did the same here. If I go to mask one here, I just kept the PC box and the graphics card geo. I know that if you wanted to be more specific about where things would emit from, let's say you were, in my case, I'm using the tires geometry as an emitter, right? If you wanted to be more specific about it, you would have to go into mask and you'd have to paint like some vertex colors out of Blender or whatever software, 3D software you're exporting the data from, and you would use that as like, yeah, I want to use my red channel with a value of 1. So wherever you had painted red on the geometry, it would source that rather than the entire piece of geo. There's a lot of very straightforward, helpful, useful tutorials for EmberGen online, both on YouTube and their forum. And it's really, I mean, I did this thing in just a couple of hours with zero knowledge. So trust me, it's very easy. And you get to have a lot of fun. So yeah, once I set up, I swapped the paths, the nodes. So I plugged in my tires as an emitter, and my tires were rotating, so they're getting pretty wild. But then for your collider, I added my PC box, the graphics card into the environment geo, my car right here. So it doesn't actually, like the wheels don't just shoot out everywhere. they'll actually respect the geometry of the vehicle. So with those two as my collider geos, I only went in and messed around with the speed settings. I believe the animation speed was set to 2 here. I brought it down to 1.2. I did the same thing here, animation speed set to 1. And then you'll also want to make sure you set up a simulation grid properly. For me, it was obviously pretty easy because our environment is a box. So I just set up that box and updated the resolution for the voxel count. There is one important thing to note. Your time step is your FPS, which it says it in hertz here. It defaults to 60 hertz. I've been working in 30 FPS because that's that was the frame rate the footage came in from with CamTrackAR. So be sure to set that to 30 or 24 or whatever you're working in. So with all that done, I was pretty happy with how things turned out. I did a couple of tests here and there, but then I made sure to go to volume processing. I hooked up a export VDB. If you go to export VDB, and I set my frame range. I definitely set export velocity to on because we want motion blur with that. And some of these settings really can be up to you if you had fuel or flames or whatnot. Obviously, that's going to produce a larger file size. But yeah, this was basically it. And you'll see that like what you see in here is not what you're going to get in any of the softwares you import. It is going to be the same fundamentally, but visually things are not going to look the same. So that's where the fun part comes in. In my case, I really enjoy working with Vray volume grids, which use VDBs. So I think once we go into 3D Studio Max, you'll see how cool it is. So let's do that. Okay, let's quickly set up the 3D file. Start with the color management. I'm going to set that to OCIO Tech Preview. Okay, just want to make sure my frame range is at 30, which it is. All right, we can import the same geo we used in EmberGen. So let me just navigate to that. EmberGen import. I'm going to bring in this entire setup right here. Cool. So if I jump to camera real quick, yeah, scrub through. I think I have my frame range at 430 to 900. All right. Just hit play. Great. This is actually the one I exported is the high resolution geo. And we're reading ABC files, Olympic files. So let's see, what is this? A piece of glass right here. Don't need that. Yeah, because I want to shatter the glass, I'm gonna use these two, but I'll put it aside for now. Create a new layer, call that glass. Hide that. PC box. Graphics card. Cool. So let's see, where are we going with this? First, let's make sure things hook up fine. So let's go back to our camera. Let's set up a material for our camera projection. Let's set Vray in my case as the render engine. Let me also 1920 update the resolution because what we got from CamTrackAR is actually 1920 by 1440. All right, let's just create a quick Vray material. There we go. Let's just do it with the diffuse channel for now. So bitmap, we're going to navigate to the video file. So let's see, the max track. I converted it to an image sequence instead of the MOV. So I'm going to go with sequence Let's open this up, close that out. Let's throw this material on the box. So we're not going to see anything yet, but what we're going to do is use a camera map per pixel. So this is a render time camera mapper, not like geometry based with a modifier. Gives you a lot of flexibility this way. So we're going to select our camera. Right here. Cool. Okay. So this is going to be render time dependent, right? So let's set some stuff up here. No. Let's set this to linear. Don't apply mapping. GI is good. Okay, let me hit render real quick. And let me enable this interactive renderer. So we got our PC box there. And the question is, why are we not seeing anything, right? So I'm going to instance into the self-loom here. And let's see what's going on here. So, rendered image. Check off remove back face. All right. Okay. Things are looking promising-ish. So instead of doing the blender method, which is like a light material, emission based, like we could go in and do something like this, jack up the multiplier and everything. I prefer to use a Vray mesh. So let's create that. So we're just going to take this box, go to lights, Vray light, click anywhere. I like to zero it out after the fact, take it to the origin, and we're going to switch this to type from plane to mesh, and we're just going to pick this PC box as our mesh, right? I was on the wrong layer. It was set to invisible. So let's get that out of there. Take that back to this layer. Oh man, sometimes I forget. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so let me get that a little smaller. Let's turn this on again, our interactive render, and jump to the camera. Let me refresh. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. If I hide that light, I still have this piece of geo, so I need to delete that. Let's bring our light back. Let me also just make things a little brighter for now. Flip the normals. There we go. Nice and bright. Bring that down. Bring it up a little bit, just so we see things a bit more clearly. But yeah, so we've got this plane object. Might as well throw a gray shader on there. Okay. Let's move around. Nice. Yeah, things are looking promising. We could toggle visibility here. The reason I love using Vray Mesh Light is you get so much more control out of it. Like, hey, I want more specularity instead of diffusion, or I don't want it, or I want more atmospheric influence. You get a lot more out of this than your typical, self-illumination material or emission method, right? Let me also throw a gray shader on that for a second. Okay, let's bring in our volume grid. Let's go to Objects, Vray volume grid, click that, navigate to where your volume grid, your VDB files are located. You can see these are nicely high resolution what I exported. So you just need to select one frame, let that load for a second. Yeah, we should be good now. Let's just scrub a little bit. There we go. Let's go a bit further out. Yeah, so things are definitely lining up now. Okay, let's go back a little bit here. Let's start testing out some frames. Open up Vray. Let me just dial down some of the settings I had. Something like a 0.2 resolution. Let's go half just for now. By the way, when you create a volume grid, you get this atmosphere right here. If it's not checked on, by default it will check on, but if it's not checked on, if it's off, then it is not going to render. So just be aware of that. Let's get our frame buffer going. Ooh, explosive. Very explosive. Okay, so at the moment the only light source we have is from within the actual VDB, the volume grid. Let's take a look here real quick. So you can utilize this GPU preview, which is super handy. Does live updates, really cool stuff. If you're ever concerned about how things look, you want to line stuff up in the viewport, this is really cool. But I'm going to turn that off. Right, let's open up our volumetric options. This is where all the good stuff happens. All right, let's also expose down for a second. Nice, you can see that's where the core is from the combustion. Set that to 0, and let's go live with the interactive renderer. Okay, so it's coming in pretty hot right off the bat. Vray will create firelights, just like artificially creates lights, light sources where the temperature channel lives. So it's kind of like actually adjusting a physical light. So let's bring down that intensity for a minute. This also, as it says, is the intensity on the scene versus the intensity on the volume grid up here. Light resolution, the higher you go with this, the cooler stuff looks, but takes longer. So I'm going to drop that down a bit. We're not really going to see too much of a difference right now. So when it is set to, the opacity mode is set to fully visible, it's not really going to do much shadowing. It's not going to utilize the density of the volume to shadow. But if you were to set it to smoke opacity, it's going to start multiplying against the smoke density. So we want to use not simple smoke, which is just a flat color, a flat value of like 0.5 here in this case. Let's say we set it to 1. It's going to make it fully opaque, which is cool, but we want to instead remap it. So we're going to go to smoke, and you get this cool graph here, which just gives you a generic 0 to 1. I like to expand the graph completely, so I'll set that to a 0 and make sure that's at 1 up there. If we were to bring this down, let's just explore for a second and look at the alpha. You're basically taking the tail end of the volume and reducing how intense it is in terms of density. You're remapping it from 1 down to, whatever, in this case 0.3. But if we take that back up to 1, and instead let's look at the core over here and set this value to like a 0.5. You're like clamping at the bottom end. This is not going to look good. I think that's what that warning was. Yeah, see, you're like filling up that whole area. You're forcing values in there that shouldn't be there. So we'll take that back down to 0. And instead, what I like to do is I'll double click here, and I really want to get all this cool, turbulence and the tendrils and whatnot to show up. So I'm going to force a lot of that to come through by like really remapping this into this corner right here. Let's see how that looks. That's looking pretty sweet. Pretty intense though. Let me see. Let's do this. Let's disable the temperature channel for a minute and bring in a light source. We can definitely utilize the light mesh. I'll just let that go for now. But I want to throw an area light up top. This is already looking pretty cool. It's picking up all the lighting from what we've set up already. It's going to look really sweet. But let's get a area light in here. A V-Ray light, plane. Let's draw something out, and let's take this up here. I've noticed that these volumetrics respond very well to like a top lit light source. And it does really nice shaping. It brings out, like the bubbliness and whatnot. So let's throw this up here for a minute. Let's go back to our camera, and that's pretty sweet. Let's bring down the intensity. Let's go up a little bit. You definitely, this is what I love about using a physical light, is you could really get some cool shaping out of it if you go more directional. Let's set this to invisible. Let's also go back here. You can see that I have adjusted these values. So like you could have a different influence on the atmosphere, if you wanted, which is really cool. So let's do this. Let's disable this light. Excuse me. And let's set our constant color to something brownish, dust looking. A bit more saturation. This is really useful, the light cache speed up. You can go up to like 0.95, get faster renders without sacrificing quality. That's pretty cool. Let's go back and bring that temperature channel. Let's bring this back. And let's bring this fire multiplier multiplier way down. Pretty sweet. That looks really cool. But even more, 0.003. That's pretty sweet. Now, you're probably wondering, why is this thing exploding on fire? I definitely don't want that, but I wanted something that looks pretty cool, graphic-y. So what I want to do is actually set this to like a pink color at the core. And I'll set this to like a blue over here. And I think we need to go even lower here. It doesn't seem to go any lower than that. Probably we need to bring this down 0, 2. Okay. Now I want to see, I kind of want that to spread back out. Okay, I think what I need to do is readjust this here. 0.37, something like a 0.35 over here. Let's try that out. This should give us something a lot thicker, I believe. No? There we go. I had to check off scale opacity by scene units. There we go. That's a lot cooler. Way cooler. I can't believe I forgot about that. Okay. So now let's check this off for a second. That area light. Let me take a look at the alpha. Okay, I think we could go back up here now. Set this to 0.004 maybe. That's pretty freaking sweet, but pretty wild as well. Let's bring this down, 0.1. There you go. That's about as much as I wanted that to be. Okay, let's bring back our light mesh. Let's set this to 0. That's looking pretty cool. I'm going to bring back this top light and reduce the intensity. Let me go a bit brighter. Let's see how things look at another area. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That looks pretty awesome. Especially if you consider once you get some higher quality settings, that's going to look really cool. Yeah, that's awesome. That looks super cool. So let's do this. Let's add some light selects. This is one of the things that's really awesome about Vray. I love to use these light selects, and they work pretty well with these volumetrics. So I'll just call this like L_top, if it will let me. It's making some noises. L_PC. Let's just leave this for a second. So top. That's our light right there. PC. Select this light. And I also want to add a self-illume. And let me see. Atmosphere. Let's. Very cool. So I would definitely like, take this into compositing and kind of adjust these lights individually after the fact, however I see fit, to get something even cooler out of it. Like, I would probably take the self-illume and modify it somehow, whether it's with colors or gamma, just to get a bit more control in post out of it. Or even better yet, I would just render the volumetric without any lights as one pass. And then I would render these other lights as another pass with light selects. I think that would be a better idea. But yeah, so now that we've got all this, you could just move on to actually, setting up like a shadow catcher for the graphics card, the plane. Let's do that actually. There's a bit of issue with the geo that came through, so I just had to create a new plane for it to work. But basically, this is your shadow catcher, and the way you get one of these is if you go to the Vray properties, check on matte object, set this to -1. So it's going to be all black except where there is shadow information. And when you turn this on, that's how you get the shadow in the alpha. You can set this to 0. Refresh that. Oops, wrong button. But yeah, so this is pretty crucial for integration, because if you were to just throw a car on top and smoke and stuff like that onto a plate, it's not going to sit well until you have some sort of contact shadow, which is representative of the environment and the scene that's in. Now this top light I wouldn't particularly do for the vehicle, but it might be helpful, but yeah, that's our alpha. Let's bring these guys back. Visible to camera. All right, let's bring our volume grid back. Let's also, just so we could see it in the render, let's make this light visible. I think this light is too bright. Oh, top. Let's bring that down to 1.5 maybe. Cool. Go to top. There we go. So at the moment, for what we're doing, this is actually cutting out, but if you're going to do it in compositing passes, that's going to be fine. Okay, so I want to show you guys what I did for the glass shattering simulation. It's not the same exact setup and settings, but more or less it is the same process. So I think in some ways this kind of looks cooler, but I'm pretty happy with what I got on the actual comp as well. But yeah, this is pretty simple to do. I use Tyflow, with the free version at least. So how did we achieve this? Basically, I started with, as you would guess, a box with a little bit of thickness. And if we go to Tyflow, you create that from the geometry tab, click Tyflow, and then open the editor. And you can see there's not much going on. Basically, you start off with your birth object and select the box as the source. Then you hide that object. There's not much else to do here. Then you drop in a Voronoi fracture, and you set the time, switch it to frame. Otherwise, it's going to keep fracturing exponentially, and that will probably crash your system. So set the time to roughly where the actual collision object will hit, and just do it for that exact frame, 10 to 10. What else did I do here? So I gave it quite a bit of fracturing to break up a lot of pieces. You can see here, if we were to go down to, like, let's say 100, you just get bigger chunks, but I wanted to get a lot of tiny little glass pieces, and variety as well. If you go to 100% variation, it like tries to spread it out even more. I settle for something at 50%. Another thing you'll want to do is, see, down here, Is it motion or fracture? No, it's actually not here. Okay, so actually you want to move on and put a physics shape operator. And the scale, I scaled it up from 1 to 2. Here's the difference if it was at 1. Basically, it just scales the object both in density as well as what it considers to be its bounding box. And I just got a better looking result this way. I gave it quite a huge number. To be honest, I'm not an effects artist. I know that physically you would have to do things a lot more real world-ish, but this is what I used to get the visual result I was after. So I gave it quite a bit of weight, and then I added a lot more dampening. I think by default it's like 0.5 or something like that. This helped get like the slow motion effect. So if you bring it down, it's a lot more realistic, but I wanted something more exaggerated, slow motiony. So that's how I accomplished that. As well as you'll have to couple it with these forces I'll show you in a second. But yeah, from here, you also want to go down in the physics shape and set this to ignore starting penetrations. Otherwise, it's going to actually start falling without any collisions. So I added these two forces. One of them is a gravity, and you could just reduce the strength here. I think it defaults to 1, so you can see it's just falling down. But I got what I wanted with a 0.1 value, and I kind of wanted this burst. So not only did I animate the spall going from this corner to that corner rather than straight, I kind of pushed it up to hopefully inherit some motion, as well as added this push modifier force, and cranked up its settings, so it kind of helped push it out furthermore. And really, that's all it took to accomplish this. I would prefer having more spin on this, but I guess you could put like a spin operator. But I just wanted to show you guys how to accomplish something like this. So let's take a look at how I pieced this all together. I'm going to expose up just a little bit. Basically, I rendered a couple of different elements. I think I rendered like 2 passes of the smoke sim and 2 passes of the glass. I had to do some roto, mainly around this pillar right here, this guy, so that the elements would sit behind it. Let's take a quick look. So, excuse me. So this was the main smoke sim, and I was really happy with everything that came out of it, but I did want something a little less jellyfish tail looking over here. So I did do another sim, which is a bit bulkier, as well as I like the way it kind of grew over time. So I did a little bit of a mix over a few frames and removed this out. But yeah, basically just a couple of color corrections and adjustments. Super straightforward stuff. Pieced them together, graded, sharpened. Admittedly, I could have gone with some better samples for my renders, but it's quite a lot of frames, so I kind of got by with the noise amount I had. I did use the Vray denoiser, which helped a lot, but yeah. What do we have here? So then I have the glass simulation. This was the kind of like the core area, the first sim I did. I really liked what it was doing, shooting out and whatnot, but it looked really odd just having that, So I went back and I did another simulation, which was the entire piece of glass. And I was pretty happy with that, especially when we come around. It just felt like really slow motion-y and like frozen in time. So I did a little bit of mixing between all of that. Do that on top. Like I said, I utilized the roto shapes to cut out parts I didn't need. Just one or two little lens stuff like aberration and glows, and pieced it all together. And I was pretty happy with the result, especially considering this was all just for fun, not really like doing it for production. I'm not trying to impress anybody, like a client, with it. So there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. Like you kind of have to roto this cable out and stuff like that. Fortunately, I don't have to do that because this is just for fun. But yeah, that's all there is to it. See you guys.